crossed the line. The line was exceptional.
I've had to train to get very, very proficient.
Gold medalist and Paralympic champion representing New Zealand.
You're always adjusting and adapting to conditions, and that's the thing that young players perhaps don't quite realise these days.
You're listening to the Hyundai High Performance Hour.
Yes, welcome into another edition of the Hyundai High Performance Hour. Our guest on the show tonight is a quite remarkable young man. British environmental campaigner, maritime lawyer and pioneer swimmer. Lewis Pugh was the first person to complete a long-distance swim in every one of this planet's oceans. He frequently swims in vulnerable ecosystems to draw attention to their plight and is best known for undertaking the first swim across the North Pole. Yes, the North Pole in 2007 to highlight the melting of the Arctic sea ice. And he swam across a glacial lake under the summit of Mount Everest in 2010 to draw attention to the melting glaciers in the Himalayas. Now, Pugh is a leading figure in efforts to protect the oceans. In 2010, he was named a Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum for his potential to contribute to shaping the future of the world through inspiring leadership. And in 2013, the United Nations Environment Programme appointed him Patron of the Oceans. That same year, he was inducted into the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. Those are two of his more recent accolades. It's a long and fascinating CV, and the website is incredible. There's some wonderful vision there, as well as some audio interviews, just some fantastic background information on Lewis Pugh, who joins us now from South Africa. Lewis, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to the High Performance Hour.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
I'm not sure, given that CV and given that introduction, I'm almost at a loss as to where to start. So I'll simply ask with why. What shaped you as a young man, as a child growing up, to lead you to who you are now?
Both parents were very, very influential. My father was at the first British atomic bomb test. And that shaped him and in turn shaped me. He described it with the most vivid detail. He said to me, Lewis, you simply cannot believe how powerful that explosion was. We were 10 kilometers away from the epicenter. We all had protective clothing on. We all had protective goggles over our eyes. They gave the final countdown and then they exploded that nuclear bomb. And we were literally thrown back, and I had to put my hands over my protective goggles. And when I did that, I could actually see an X-ray of the bones of my fingers. That's how powerful it was, and that's how destructive it was. And afterwards, my father, who was a surgeon in the Royal Navy, his responsibility was to go around the whole bomb site and to pick up all the dead animals. And, just to give you an idea of the numbers of atomic bombs which were exploded over this period of time, Britain detonated 45 nuclear bombs, Russia over 700, and the United States of America over 1,500. And so I grew up in England. You know, I heard this story many, many times. When I was 10, we moved out to Africa, to South Africa. And the very, very first thing which my father did when we came out to South Africa was he took me to the Addo Elephant National Park. And I remember driving into this national park and being surrounded by this huge herd of elephants. And my father said something which is very simple but very profound, and it just left a very big mark on me. He said, Lewis, we will only ever truly protect those things which we love. So that was the sort of one side. That was my father. But my mother, she loved reading me stories about the great mountaineers and the great polar explorers. And my father's cousin had been on the first Everest expedition with Sir Edmund Hillary. So he was the doctor. His name was Dr. Lewis Griffith Pugh. He had to work out how much oxygen to have in those cylinders to get Sir Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing to the summit of Everest. And so ever since I was a little boy, I dreamt one day I'll go to the polar regions, one day I'll go to the mountainous regions. And well, it took time, but eventually I got there.
Well, that is amazing, and I didn't realise that. I hadn't found that in my research, and that's kind of spooky because literally this week, in fact, I think yesterday was the world premiere, and it goes through all cinemas tomorrow. There is a a film, a documentary drama that is telling the story of Sir Edmund Hillary and, of course, conquering Everest. So that timing's a little spooky in more ways than one, Lewis, to hear that association. So I guess it was a combination then, was it, of seeing and hearing those stories in particular from your father. You literally didn't see it, but hearing the stories of destruction and the potential for man to be so destructive, and you decided to devote your energies to I guess the opposite side of that, and look at how you could try and, if not save the earth, then certainly alert people to what can be done.
Yes, and I think there was a third influence. So when I was 17, we moved to Cape Town. Now, for those of your listeners who know the geography, on the one side of Cape Town, you've got the Atlantic Ocean. On the other side, you've got an area called False Bay, and then a little bit up the coast, you've got the Indian Ocean. And so on the one side, you've got rough, cold, dangerous water. On the other side, you've got warm and often peaceful water. And so it makes perhaps the most ideal place on this planet to do your training. And of all the people who swim across the English Channel, it's South Africans, in fact, who have such a high success rate. So they train in freezing water off Robben Island, and then they go off and do the English Channel. Now, I was 17, and my high school overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, and in the distance I could see Robben Island. And my imagination was just so fertile. I'd be looking out of my classroom and thinking, and I'd have two thoughts. I'd just think to myself, I want to swim to Robben Island. The other thought was, 5,000 kilometers south of here is Antarctica. And I also want to swim there. I want to see the penguins. I want to see the whales. I want to see the glaciers. And so many years later, I was able to combine these two, this love of swimming and the desire to go to these most remote and most endangered parts of the world. And then, also wanting to campaign for their protection. Because when you see somewhere which is so beautiful and so fragile being damaged, you want to stand up and you want to talk about it.
So was that realisation upon you as a 17-year-old, or was it more just about the swimming in these remote places? Or as a 17-year-old, did you also realise that you wanted to do more than just swim?
I'm embarrassed to say it started even earlier. As a young boy, I grew up in a little village just outside Plymouth in England, and Plymouth is where all the great explorers came from. Devon is where Sir Francis Chichester, who was the first person to sail non-stop around the world, he came from there. Sir Francis Drake, the great English circumnavigator, came from there. Captain Scott, the polar explorer, came from there. Sir Walter Raleigh, they all came from there. And my father was a prolific writer, and he loved to write letters. And I'd be sent down to the post office to go and post them. And every day I'd walk past a statue of Sir Francis Drake. And I would just look at this. And I think I was 6 or 7 years old, and I'd just think, I want to go where he's gone. So, and then let me relate that back to New Zealand, because it was 2003, and I was a lawyer. I was a maritime lawyer in London, and I came out to New Zealand to do some training. And it was New Year's Eve, and I was outside Mount Cook. And there was a party there, and I hope I'm not being rude now, but it was a really boring party. And so I walked outside, and it was a beautiful moonlit night. And I stood there, and there was a statue of Sir Edmund Hillary, because I understand that he did some of his training on Mount Cook. And it was this most wonderful statue. I love statues. And it was just a wonderful statue. And the statue was him with a little rucksack on his back. But he had a smile, and he had a spring in his foot. And I've been working in London as a maritime lawyer. I've been dealing with some very, very big oil pollution cases. They went on many, many years. And to be honest, I wasn't passionate about it. And I looked at this man and I thought, he followed his dreams. And a close friend of mine had said something to me earlier that year. He said, Lewis, it's so important that you follow your own dreams in life, because if you don't follow your own dreams, you're going to be following somebody else's. And so I looked at this, and I made a decision there, right next to Mount Cook, that I would follow my dreams. And my dreams were to be a voice for the oceans, to try and campaign for the rest of my life for their protection because I love them so much. And that was it.
Well, certainly you've done so much more than even you might have dreamt of. Lewis Pugh is our guest on the Hyundai High Performance Hour. More from Lewis in particular as we talk about some of these cold water swims, swimming literally over the North Pole. Incredible stuff. We'll talk more about that in a moment or two. Go to the website if you'd like more information, hph.co.nz, and we link through to Lewis Pugh's website, and it is a fascinating read as well as a view. There's some great video footage there as well. Let's quickly update the cricket from Bangladesh. Here's Brian Waddle.
10 minutes until the tea adjournment. New Zealand 311 for 6 with Watling on 21, Bracewell on 12. They lead by 29 runs. The batsman out today for New Zealand. Williamson 62, Taylor 53 and Anderson maiden test 100, 116. 311 for 6, a lead of 29.
Thanks, Brian. More from Lewis Pugh on the Hyundai High Performance Hour next.
With spring upon us, drop in and see Ross, Zara and Caitlin at SafeWorks. They're happy to help you find the best deals for all your spring needs. Check out the great range, from gumboots to fleece-lined or PVC raincoats. Then layer up those SafeWorks deals with 100% New Zealand-made merino thermals, some of the best around. Keeping Kiwi safe nationwide. SafeWorks, 24 Railway Street, West Papakura, right off the train station. Open 8 till 5 weekdays and 9 till 2 Saturdays.
The original Aussie Butcher, fair dinkum quality.
The weatherman reckons it's going to be warm the next few days, and you know what the Aussie Butcher reckons? Time to wheel out the barbie and get stuck into these quality New Zealand specials. Fresh boneless butterflied lamb legs, just $16.99 a kg. Fresh barbecue steak, plain or marinated, now only $9.99 a kilo. And fresh barbecue lamb shoulder chops, only $9.99 a kg. Only at your local Aussie Butcher, where it's all about the flavour, it's all about the taste.
PGG Rights and Real Estate brings you New Zealand's most comprehensive rural and lifestyle magazine. Out now, spring 2013, Property Express, featuring over 170 quality properties that are currently on the market today. Pick up a copy from your local PGG Rights and Real Estate office or view online at pggwre.co.nz. Property Express. Out now, get yours today. PGG Rights and Real Estate, licensed REAA 2008.
The Hyundai High Performance Hour with Andrew Dewhurst. Proudly brought to you by Hyundai New Zealand.
And our guest on the show is Lewis Pugh, a British / South African environmental campaigner. He's a maritime lawyer by trade, but is very much a pioneer swimmer and looking to alert the world to some of these vulnerable ecosystems. And he does it how? By swimming in them. And really tonight, given the number of different ocean swims right around the world, first to swim in all of the world's oceans, there are so many we could look at. But Lewis, I'm fascinated, and I think our audience will be most fascinated with these cold water swims and just what the body goes through, the preparation that you have to put in, and the risk mitigation, I guess, that goes on during these swims. When you first thought of these cold water swims, how much did you know about those environments, those ecosystems that you were about to plunge into?
I don't think anything can prepare you for swimming across the North Pole, for example. I hadn't been to the North Pole before I went to go and do the swim there. I'd been to the Arctic, but not to the North Pole. But the risk mitigation starts when you choose your team. You know, you've got to get that part of it right. And I'm quite particular about the type of people I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who could honestly put up their hand and say, I'm one of the best in the world at what I do. And that's because the margin for error is so narrow. I'm also looking for people who are very, very humble. When you get somebody who's really confident on the one hand, but very humble on the other hand, you get a special person. And I need the humility because, you know, the circumstances change in the Arctic. It changes so quickly. I need to pull the team around me. We need to argue out a new position, then we must take it. You know, arrogant people, they know everything. I also look for people with a good sense of humor. I look for people with passion. I look for people with excellence. And lastly, I look for a specific type of personality. I look for people who are realistic optimists, people who say, Lewis, swimming across the North Pole, well, there's a reason why nobody's done it before. The water is 7 degrees centigrade colder than the water in which the passengers of the Titanic perished. So we need to get the safety right. Safety, safety, safety. But also, let's get in there and do it, you know, because we've got a reason to do this. And so I assembled a team of people, and it was 29 people. They came from 10 nations when we swam across the North Pole, and they kept it safe. So, the conditions there are so dangerous that we take care of the mitigation right at the beginning stage when we choose our team.
And that's you've just described some really exacting standards in selecting your team. Can I ask you, in selecting those around you, would you have chosen yourself?
Well, it's very, very interesting. Back in 1995, I tried to go on a polar expedition. And the polar expedition was being led by a guy called Robert Swan, who was the first person to walk the North Pole and South Pole. He's an Englishman. And at the time, I was doing a master's degree at university. And he advertised that he was looking for one person from every continent to walk with him as part of the 50-year anniversary of UNESCO, walk to the South Pole. And so I took off university, and I trained so hard. I cannot begin to tell you how hard I trained. And then we had the selection, and then he didn't choose me. And I was gutted. But I learned a really important lesson there, and that was don't wait for other people to choose you to go on your own polar expedition or your own mountain expedition. And I made a decision right there that if I wanted to do an expedition, I would raise a sponsorship, I would raise the team, and we would get out there and go and do it. And so that was the way I've done it since then. They are very tough criteria, but it's just because, our lives are on the line. And if one of us were to die during this, campaigning, it would just send not only is somebody dead and nothing is worth somebody dying for in an expedition, but it would send such a negative message. So I'm very strict.
See, the reason in part that I asked the question, Lewis, is that you do hear of many successful people in all different walks of life, and one of the keys is that they will do what you've done. They will surround themselves with great people, with experts, with people that aren't just going to be yes men or women, but people who will question along the way. And if you yourself, if you were this arrogant, over-the-top, strutting know-it-all, it all would very quickly have fallen around you. So was it important for you to identify the strengths that you needed to complement yourself and your own character?
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things is I choose the people who are the very, very best people in their different departments. So, for example, when it came to choosing somebody who would advise me on the ice, I chose a guy called Jürgen Amundsen. Now, his great-great-uncle was the first person to walk to the South Pole. He beat Captain Scott to the South Pole. And Jürgen himself had walked to the North Pole, or done a section of walking to the North Pole. So he was the very best person I could find. When it came to a doctor, I went around looking for a doctor, and every doctor said to me, Lewis, this is crazy. You'll kill yourself. The only person who said to me, I believe you can do it, was a guy called Professor Tim Noakes, who's a very courageous doctor and sports scientist from the University of Cape Town. And he said, I believe you can do it. So he was automatically in the team. I then needed to have somebody who would focus my mind, and I had a very close friend who was very, very good at that. So each person I chose, and because I considered them the very, very best in their field that I could find, well, then I don't need to do anything because I just set out the vision and then they just take care of their specific department. So it's a very flat structure. So if the doctor comes along to me and says, Lewis, I don't think this is safe, well, then I just get out the water because he knows better than me. Or if Jürgen says, Lewis, I don't think this ice is safe, it's moving so quickly, we're not going to be able to get you into a safe position, well, then I just don't swim. So it's very liberating when you choose the very, very best people. And it's also, there aren't big egos, and that is because everybody to your left or to your right is the very best in the world at what they do.
Yeah, very important in terms of that structure. So you say there was really little or no way to prepare for a swim at the North Pole in water temperatures that I understand were minus 1.7 degrees, and yet clearly there was some research, some preparatory work done, and you did have 2 swims, didn't you, in the Arctic?
Well, so what we did was, I mean, it wasn't like I had a dream. You go up to the North Pole, you dive in, and you go for it. It is such a dangerous place, and it was it started when I was 17, and I swam from Robben Island to Cape Town. There the water was 18 degrees, and then a few years later I swam across the English Channel. And so every single year I tried to do bigger and tougher and more challenging swims. And then it started coming to the turn of the century, and between myself, an American swimmer called Lynn Cox and a Slovenian swimmer called Martin Strel, we had taken every single major landmark in the world. So it was like being Edmund Hillary in the 1950s before Everest and all the big peaks had been climbed. Everything, we had done. The only things which were left were the North Pole and was swimming down the Amazon. And Martin Strel swam down the Amazon. And then I started swimming in some of the cold places. And it just started getting colder and colder and colder. Until I did the first swim in the Arctic. So I did a swim at the top of Norway, and then we thought to ourselves, okay, well, what about the North Pole? I mean, imagine the message which we can get across to the world about the melting of the Arctic sea ice. And just in the 2 previous years, so in 2005 and 2006, 23% of the Arctic sea ice had melted away. I mean, and so I said to my team, let's try go to the North Pole. Let's try and do a symbolic swim there, because you shouldn't be able to do a swim there. We hope that if we could do that, we could really shake the lapels of world leaders. Because you can be in Auckland, you can be in Cape Town, you can be in London. Wherever you are in the world, you will be impacted by what happens in the Arctic. And so Tim Noakes, the doctor, he built a special swimming pool. And every day, he'd make me swim 1 kilometer in there. And we had a lot of ice, which was donated by a local fishing factory. And then the first day, he made me swim 1 kilometer in 14 degrees. And then the next day at 13. And then the next day at 12. And then eventually we got down to 1 degree. And he said, Lewis, I think you can do it. And so we sailed off to the North Pole. And I'll never, ever forget that feeling when I arrived at the North Pole. Because everywhere there were these melted pools of water. And Tim looked at me and he said, Lewis, I wonder what this place will look like in another 50 years' time. We didn't have much time to think about it. The ship just stops there for an hour or so, and then it heads south again. And so we went down to my cabin, and he put this chest monitor around my chest, which measured my core body temperature and my heart rate. And as he was putting it on, his hands began to start shaking. and I just looked at him, and I just said to him, I said, Tim, I just want you to know how very, very grateful I am to you, because there are not many doctors who'd be prepared to come here and take this type of risk. And he looked at me and just ever the gentleman, he said, Lewis, it's a privilege to be here today, but let's just get this bloody swim over and done with. And so we walked off onto the sea ice. And I remember looking in at the water, and the water of the North Pole is completely black. They call it the Black Ocean. And it was absolutely frightening. And I said to David Becker, who was my coach, I said, David, if things go pear-shaped here now during this swim, I said, for God's sake, don't let me do the 4 kilometer. Pull me out after 500 meters. And he looked at me and he said, Lewis, if you dive into this water preparing to swim 1 kilometer, but also thinking about the possibility of getting out after just 500 meters, do you know what you're doing then? And I said to him, what? He said, Lewis, you're confusing the most important part of you, your subconscious, because you have got thoughts of victory and defeat in your mind at the same time. And he looked me straight in the face and he said, Lewis, now's the time to believe in yourself, to believe in us as this team, and to carry this message. There's nothing more powerful than a made-up mind. I need you to make up your mind, walk up to the edge of the sea ice, dive in, and swim straight to the North Pole, and we will be with you every single stroke of the way.
Fantastic. Wonderful stuff. And we'll talk about each and every one almost of those strokes. You can watch some of the video, and it is fascinating. We link to Lewis Pugh's website from ours. Go to hph.co.nz and have yourself a look. It really is fascinating. More on this wonderful swim and other achievements with Lewis Pugh in a moment or two on the High Performance Hour. They've gone to tea at the cricket. Here's Brian Waddle with news of a wicket on the stroke of tea.
Indeed, it was Doug Bracewell who was caught behind by Mushfiqur from the bowling of Shakib, giving Shakib his 5th wicket, 5 for 71 in his 31st over, and Bracewell out for 17. Watling is still there on 23. The other batsmen out today, Anderson 116, Taylor 53, Williamson 62, New Zealand 318 for 7 at tea. They hold a lead at the moment of 36 runs with 3 wickets in hand, and there are still 31 overs to be bowled on the third day. 318 for 7 at tea.
Good stuff. Thank you, Brian. More from Lewis Pugh on the High Performance Hour up next.
You can depend on Davy Water Products.
Right now, you could have unwanted visitors in your building. Billions of them setting up home in your old water coolers. Bacteria, viruses, mould, eek! Time to call Davy Microline to check your water cooler. Davy Microline will give your business a free water health audit and make sure you always have safe, healthy drinking water for your staff. Arrange a welcome visitor now by calling 0800 654 333.
Who helps businesses work better? We do. We're Regis, Flexible Office Solutions. With Regis, you only pay for the office space you need, when you need it, where you need it. And with 1,500 locations worldwide, that could be anywhere. From a single desk with Wi-Fi to a whole private office. What's ours is yours. Want to know more? Call 0800 555 703 or visit regus.co.nz.
Keep it going with Agreco, global leaders in generator and temperature control systems. Whether you're a public utility or an event organizer, Agreco are there for you. From domestic power supply to power station hire to industrial cooling and air conditioning, Agreco on call 24/7 New Zealand wide. Call 0800 950 950 and talk with an Agreco representative today. 0800 950 950.
Wildcats, Thursday night, 7:40, live from the NSEC Radio Sport. The Hyundai High Performance Hour, proudly brought to you by Hyundai New Zealand.
Our guest on the show is Lewis Pugh. Lewis has also written a couple of books, and given what we've discussed so far, it won't surprise you that one of them is called Achieving the Impossible. The other, rather intriguingly, is called 21 Yaks and a Speedo. He swum each and every one of the oceans on this planet. He's also swum in lakes. He swam 350 kilometres in the Thames. Took 21 days, mind you. So wonderful, wonderful CV. Fascinating reading. We link to Lewis's website from ours, hph.co.nz. The swim we're talking about in particular tonight, though, was the North Pole in 2007, a 1 kilometre swim in 18 minutes and 50 seconds. We've discussed the lead up. We've discussed that wonderful moment with your doctor and your support staff, Lewis. But going into the swim, what were the key aspects of your physiology? You've mentioned heart rate and core body temperature. Was there anything else that you were monitoring or that you'd researched going into the swim that was vital to its success?
One of the things as people think about long distance swimmers and endurance swimmers is that they need to be fat. So people see people who swim across the English Channel and they're big and they're fat, but we established that what was more important than fat, although that is helpful, is you need to be big and you need to be strong. There needs to be a lot of muscle. And so most of my training, there was a lot of weights training just to build up an enormous amount of bulk. But the other part of the training is you need to get your mind right. So we visualized over and over and over again that swim from the beginning all the way to the end. And the team consisted of 29 people. They came from 10 nations. We took all their national flags with us. And we put one of those flags at every 100-meter mark. And my coach said to me, he said, Lewis, when you dive in, all I want you to think about is just swimming the 100 meters. And when you get there, I want you to slow down, and I want you to look at that flag, and I want you to think about all the men and all the women from that nation who have inspired you and helped you to be here so much. And then when you've done that, I want you to do another 100 meters and so on and so forth until you get to the end. He said, if you start thinking about a kilometer in this type of water, it looks absolutely impossible, but I know that you can do 100 meters. And so that was very, very crucial, just breaking this thing down into manageable chunks. And the 800-meter flag was the New Zealand flag, because I had a close friend who had been helping me from New Zealand, and yeah.
So, in terms of what this is doing to you, we hear often in icy cold water conditions of things such as a gag reflex almost, where you fall into, if you go over your head into icy cold water, that the body reacts with this reflexive action, and that in fact that can lead to some people drowning. I mean, that is literally how cold the water is. So how did you cope? How did you plan for what your body was going to say to you the moment that you dipped yourself into the water?
Yeah. So, for example, the passengers of the Titanic, everyone thinks they died of cold. You don't die of cold. So as you say, you actually drown. You just can't breathe. You're gasping for air. And the only way that we could counter that was just training at very, very low temperatures frequently, so to acclimatize my body. So for weeks after weeks, I was training in water under 5 degrees centigrade. And I started, you can never get fully used to it. When you dive into water, which is below zero, it is absolutely, I mean, the first thing that happens is you just can't breathe. You're gasping for air. It feels as if you've got somebody behind you, literally squeezing your chest. You just got to fight that. And you just got to try and control yourself. You've got to calm down, and then you just got to start swimming. And you've got to start swimming as quickly as you can. There's no time to fanny around. And then I just broke it down. Just get to the 100 meters, and then get to the 200 meters, then carry on, and don't quit. I've met many people, many of your listeners will probably have met somebody who quitted in their lives. And so often we quit at the sort of 900 meter mark. And when it happens, it's, quitting can very, very easily become a habit. And so whenever I was doing my training, I forced myself just to get to before I got in the water, we set out a distance and I had to complete it. No ifs, no buts. And, my coach was very, very rigorous with that. So, that was the type of mindset which we had.
And we should point out, and I don't know that we've mentioned it yet, but we should make it very clear that you are swimming in a pair of Speedos, normal swim goggles and a swim cap. Nothing more. You're not wearing a fancy wetsuit here. You are exposed to the elements, aren't you?
Yes, and I mean, we chose that for a specific reason. When we actually began the training, we thought that I would have to do it in a wetsuit. We just thought that there was no possibility. But once we had got down to 1 degree centigrade, and I was doing that, not fairly comfortably, but I was being able to handle it, we felt, okay, I can do it in just a pair of Speedos, as you pointed out. The reason why we did that was it was symbolic. I go around the world, I meet business leaders, I meet politicians, and I'm asking them to do absolutely everything that they can to protect the environment. Every single thing. And often what I'm asking them to do is unpopular, either with shareholders or with the electorate. And so if I'm asking for them to be courageous, myself and our team, we must also try to be as courageous as possible. And we felt that swimming in a wetsuit or a dry suit would not send the right message. But I can tell you something, we came very, very close to the edge. When I got out, they immediately took me onto a ship, they took me into a hot shower. It took me 50 minutes in a boiling hot shower to reheat again. And it took me 4 months to feel my hands again after that swim. And sometimes I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, I look at my hands, I think how very, very lucky we were.
So your support team, I assume through the 18 minutes, 50 seconds, that they are monitoring your vitals, are they? And that they're keeping an eye on your physiology. Was there a marker? Was there a line? Was there a certain number in that data they were getting that would have said, we've got to get him out of the water?
Yes, correct. So the doctor has got a chest monitor around my chest. He's also able to measure my core body temperature. So on a computer, he's able to look at my heart rate, my core body temperature. He's also counting my strokes. And he's shouting out this information to me and writing it on a whiteboard while I'm doing the swim. And so I can see from that where my core body temperature is and how it begins to drop. Now, one thing that's interesting is that we found that just before I got into the water, so a normal core body temperature is about 37 degrees centigrade. Every time I jumped into the water, just before I got in, my core body temperature would jump up to 38.2, 38.3 degrees. Now, that doesn't sound like a big difference, going from 37 up to 38.3 degrees. But just bearing in mind that if you go up 2 degrees, you are hypothermic. And if you go down just 2 degrees, we are hypothermic. And so the thermoregulation of the human is a very, very narrow band. So because, and there have been lots of people who have tried to explain why is it that Lewis's core body temperature rises before he gets into the water. They call this anticipatory thermogenesis. But why is it that happens? I think it was just fear. I was absolutely frightened. But it gave me that extra time in the water, which perhaps other people wouldn't have been able to handle because their core body temperature would have started at 37.
So has there been further research into this? Is it something that was there when you were going through these training swims in the pool with the ice, or was it something that just occurred out in the ocean swims?
No, it actually happened during the training that we first noted it. So the professor, he always made me swim with a thermometer, and every time it happened when we went below 5 degrees, and you don't want to be one of my friends because we then had to choose a number of control subjects. So there's no point in doing a study just on me. You want to see what's happening to everybody else. And so one of my friends, unfortunately, had to do some of the swims below 5 degrees, and he didn't, his core body temperature was at 37, and then it just quickly went downhill. We haven't done a big study on a lot of people because there are not many people who want to get turfed into water of 0 degrees and told to swim. But it'll be interesting to see what actually happened on a larger scale.
We're talking with Lewis Pugh. He is an ocean advocate. He's one of the world's greatest open water ocean swimmers. And we're talking about a swim in 2007, a 1 kilometre swim at the North Pole. It took him 18 minutes and 50 seconds in a water temperature of minus 1.7. More in a moment.
When it rains, it's good news, man. It means the cool, refreshing drinks are on the house.
If you have a flat bitumen roof on your house, Mohan Roofing have a special coating that not only lengthens the life of the roof, but makes rainwater perfectly safe for drinking water.
It's cool, man.
And it's environmentally friendly. Drink water straight off your roof. Mohan Roofing. Go to mohan.co.nz for details.
Cool Mohan, man.
Auckland Fork Truck Hire. The hint is in the name. They hire out fork trucks. Big ones, small ones, electric and gas. Fork trucks for small jobs and the mother of all jobs. They sell, repair and service all fork trucks. So if you need something lifted for hours or for years, Auckland Fork Truck Hire are the best place to see. They even have a 24-hour breakdown service. Auckland Fork Truck Hire, lifting your business to a greater height. 387 Nielsen Street, Penrose. Phone 09 636 7811.
This guy I work with has to take days off to go get his car sorted out. But here I am, at the office taking care of business, and my car's being serviced by Home Tune right now. They'll happily come to your workplace. Home Tune servicing for European cars starts at just $179, so it doesn't cost any extra. It's just way more convenient. Talk about working smarter.
On Home Tune, 630-3000, 630-3000.
In 2013, two of the world's most majestic creatures do battle in one of the world's most prestigious fields.
You mean a dragon facing a unicorn?
Not real creatures.
It's at least at Hogwarts, though, isn't it?
You're speaking in tongues. Radio Sport and DeWalt present the ITM Cup Championship Grand Final.
Oh, that makes sense.
Friday night, 7:35. The Tasman Marcos take on the Hawke's Bay Magpies. Live from Trafalgar Park, Nelson. Radio Sport. The Hyundai High Performance Hour with Andrew Dewhurst. Proudly brought to you by Hyundai New Zealand.
It's 11 away from 10 o'clock on the Hyundai High Performance Hour. We're talking with the British environmental campaigner, maritime lawyer, pioneer swimmer. He's in the Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame, Lewis Pugh. In 2007, he swam a kilometre at the North Pole in water temperatures of minus 1.7 degrees. Lewis, in the notes that I've read, the research I've been able to do, that there's reference to the test swim the day before going horribly wrong. Can you tell us what went wrong and what bearing that had on the swim itself?
Yes, I mean, you don't want to arrive at the North Pole and then that be your first experience of minus 1.7. So we'd only done training swims in 1 degree. And so just before we got to the North Pole, Professor Tim Noakes said to me, he said, Lewis, let's just have a quick test swim. And so we went out onto the ice. I dived into the water. I mean, it was such a shock. I've never experienced anything like it. My goggles immediately froze onto my face. Some water got stuck inside them. They immediately became ice cubes. I got the ice cubes out. I started swimming. But it just, I'd never experienced anything like it, the shock. I did 400 meters. I climbed out and everybody was in shock. I mean, just to see the reaction. I mean, my stroke was literally in the space of 100 meters went from a nice, relaxed swimming stroke to literally slapping the water. I got out, got back onto the ship. I got straight into a hot shower. It took me nearly 50 minutes to reheat again. And over the period of the next 24 hours, I just had to somehow pull myself together. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to carry this message to the world. As I think I mentioned in the 2 previous summers, 23% of the Arctic sea ice had melted. And then you really have to ask yourself, why are you doing this? And does it really matter? And it really did to me. And I wanted to do a proper symbolic swim across the North Pole. I didn't want to dive in, swim around for 2 or 3 minutes, and get out and then try to preach to the world. But like a fool, I had told BBC, CNN, Sky News, you name it, that I was going to do a kilometre across the North Pole. And so my coach, he just sat me down and he said, Lewis, you can do this. We all believe that you can do this. I myself had doubts about it, but he just said, we believe that you can do this. And we are going to be with you every single stroke of that way. And you just need to commit, and commit 100%. And so...
What would you say, and if possible, a percentage figure? I'm not sure if you can, but you've already described some of the physical and the mental challenges. How would you compare the two? What was the bigger challenge for you to overcome, the mental or the physical, to achieve this?
I mean, both were tough. I hear people say, it's 90% mental and 10% physical. I'll tell you something, it's pretty robust in that water. I've never thought of myself as a racehorse. I'm like a mule. I just keep on going and just fight it out. And that's probably the type of body type that you need in that type of water. But
so what did happen to your heart? What did happen to your heart rate during the swim?
It starts off very, very high, but then it starts slowing down. And I mean, you get slower and slower and slower. And what Tim Noakes had done, the doctor, he said, Lewis, we know that your core body temperature will start at 38.3, 38.4. But when it gets down to 35, which is clinical hypothermia, I will pull you out the water, whether you're a kilometer or not. He said, and the reason for that is because once I get out the water, we think everything is fine. That's when the danger occurs. And the reason is because when you dive into the water, all your warm blood goes to your core, and then it's kept there. And then very little blood is shunted around your periphery. So the body's ingenious at defending that core and protecting that core. When I get out the water, though, now suddenly that freezing cold blood in the arms and legs returns to the heart, and your core body temperature keeps on dropping. And for nearly 50 minutes, my core body temperature kept dropping after I had left the water. So for 50 minutes, it kept dropping. And that's where the danger occurs. They call it the after drop. So you've got to make sure that you get out in time, that you can also handle that after drop.
Wow. Amazing stuff. The hour's just flown by. We're out of time, but it's a marvellous, marvellous story, and there are so many more swims than just the one that we've touched upon this evening, and, of course, the work that you're doing, the efforts that you're making to alert the world to some of these ecosystems and what's happening to them. Very quickly, Lewis, what's next? Are you done with ocean swimming, or is there something left in the tank yet?
Andrew, we haven't started yet. And I mean that. I've dedicated my life to trying to be a voice for the oceans and trying to protect them. I'm about to embark on the biggest expedition of my life. It's a 3-year expedition around the world to the most endangered parts of our oceans to campaign for marine protected areas, which are big like national parks in the oceans. I'm not going to tell you precisely what we're doing, but you can imagine if it's going to take us 3 years.
Wow.
It's big.
Wow. Amazing stuff. Been fascinating talking with you, and really enjoyed the research and reading about these swims, Lewis. We wish you the very best of luck, and we will continue to watch from afar here in New Zealand.
Andrew, it's been a privilege to speak to you and your audience. Thank you.
Lewis Pugh with us. A reminder, the website, we link to it from ours. It's a fascinating story. Go to hph.co.nz.
Man needs meat. Sure, you can get your protein from other sources, but it's hard to eat a bucket load of tofu when you're paddling a canoe. That's why Jack Link's beef jerky was born, to give you meat. Tasty meat. In a handy packet. Because man can't survive on tofu or Greek yogurt, which is like tofu, but runny. Jack Link's beef jerky, prime New Zealand meat and plenty of great flavors. Feed your wild side.
Who helps businesses work better? We do. We're Regis, Flexible Office Solutions. With Regis, you only pay for the office space you need, when you need it, where you need it. And with 1,500 locations worldwide, that could be anywhere. From a single desk with Wi-Fi to a whole private office. What's ours is yours. Want to know more? Call 0800 555 703 or visit regus.co.nz.
Boy, we're good mates, right? And so are our mates at Massey Ferguson. And that's why they're offering mates rates. Great mates, great rates. That's right, your local Massey Ferguson dealer has tractor and loader packages at mates rates. Plus, there's sweet deals on hay equipment. And mates rates also means that there's good as finance deals. Don't miss Massey Ferguson's Mates Rates for mates. Visit masseymatesrates.co.nz or drop into your nearest Massey Ferguson dealer. Be quick.
IRL Pipes bring you the finest pipes from around the world.
The Banzai Pipeline, or Pipeline as it's known, the world-famous surf break in Hawaii. Home to the Billabong Pipeline Masters, the final event of the ASP World Tour. Notable surfers to earn their reputation at Pipeline include world champion Sonny Garcia and Kelly Slater.
IRL Pipes can't surf, but they are the experts in installing industrial piping. Visit irlpipes.co.nz.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed that chat with Lewis Pugh. Certainly someone a little different, and we do enjoy that from time to time on the Hyundai High Performance Hour. And Hyundai got a wonderful project on at the moment, looking to return some family time, and it could be to you. So check them out at hyundai.co.nz. Wonderful family-focused project on the Hyundai website. In fact, through their dealers right around the country, hyundai.co.nz. News coming up next, and after 10, we'll open the lines, take your calls. I'm going to just try and tell you what was happening 2 years ago at this very moment. We're going to count down some of the key moments of that Rugby World Cup final towards the final whistle. But we're keen to open the lines, take your calls on those memories, because we've got the William Webb Ellis Cup with us here in the studio. Yes. The photo's on Facebook. Check it out. We want your stories. What were you doing? What are your memories of that night 2 years ago today when we finally got the monkey, the gorilla, off our backs?
We ain't got no swing except for the rain.